Good morning. This is Luda Kopakina with GAI Insights. Welcome to Daily AI News Review, where we rate the news essential, important, and optional to give you guidance on what's happening in its avalanche of news, lots of news every day. Today, we have John, Ankaj, Paul, and a special guest, Alden de Rosario, who is the CEO of Custom GPT. Many of you have heard and tried the product. This is a wonderful product that we are really happy to have Alden with us.
Thanks,
Great.
Luda.
All right, let's start with the first one. Ankash, please.
Sure, thanks, Luda. So the first one that we have for today comes from Ethan Mollick and talks about the Cybernetic teammate.
Yes. How do you use the models as teammates and teams using the models? What's the impact? What do you think about this one, John?
Absolutely essential. Fantastic study done here at Procter & Gamble, over 700 professionals using it. And this is a collaboration between the folks at OpenAI and MIT and Harvard Business School and Wharton. And what they find, if you go down a little farther, Ankash, I'd like to show some of the graphics. So what this is saying right here is that AI boosts performance, that an individual, this in terms of overall quality, the individual using AI is in the yellow, is better than the team by itself. Over in the far left is just the individual without anything. So this is looking at AI as a teammate. Over on the right-hand side, optimal value is the combination of the team and the AI. If you go down a little farther, Ankash, there's a fantastic finding here that shows that right there, that this is the top 10%. So it's a combination of thinking through what does it mean to move the average up. You know, if you think of a normal distribution, moving the average up, that happens, and an individual plus AI is better than a team without anything. Then this shows that actually in the top 10%, that a team plus AI is better than the individual. And certainly the team with just the team by itself is also better than the individual in terms of capturing the top 10%. So the interesting finding here that individual work, no question, is better than a team with just a person and AI. Then if you take a team by itself, they'll get a top 10% answer, a little bit better than the individual. But as you can see here, it's markedly better in terms of getting top 10% with a team. So I think this is vital, and we're also going to have a conversation about this in one of the articles coming up in terms of the emotion and the OpenAI and MIT Media Lab are doing together, the emotion that's associated with the use of AI. But executives need to think about that these are models are like another staff member. They're a silicon intelligence that changes the dynamic of an individual and a team. They're a conversation partner. This is, in some cases, traditional automation. You can just get rid of the human labor. But the unexplored territory and real value is also going to come with AI as team member. And it won't just be one AI. I think it'll be different roles and so forth. So absolutely essential.
Okay, essential rating ongoing. What do you think, Alden?
Yeah, definitely. Like, when I see papers like this, I remember there's a Steve Jobs video where he talks about how a man on a bicycle is far more efficient than a condor flying in the sky, right? And tools like this are a great example of that. And as mentioned in this paper, this would be like the whole team riding bicycles rather than somebody walking or, uh, you know, uh, bringing the whole ecosystem up. We are seeing this across the board when everybody is using the AI. It's raising the efficiency of the entire team.
Yeah. What I particularly liked about this paper is this graph that it seems like it's equalizing between the functions, and now the specific knowledge of the functions can be brought in, even though the expertise of that particular function is missing in the team or not as pronounced. So it's an interesting change that's happening, and how it will be treated by the leaders is very important. It's essentially the call for rewiring. Paul, any thoughts?
Oh yeah, 100% agree with Central here. I just want to amplify two things. I think John's kickoff was fantastic. I think executives aren't understanding enough about what team augmentation does. We talked a lot about the 3 levels of AI going into products, going to a process that often doesn't involve humans, and individual productivity here. And I actually think this is a 4th layer. This is human team productivity. So, in the Ukraine war, you have teams of humans and teams of androids competing, and business competition is a team sport here. So I think the whole notion that we think about how do we augment human teams, and Alden, as you know, then that dribbles down to a whole bunch of features, right? How do we have a consistent brand across these teams? How do we have consistent RAG across these teams? How do we have consistent role-based access control and everything else here? So AI for team augmentation is a new white space that's not been discussed enough in industry, and it's really powerful.
Yeah. Okay. Essential it is. Let's proceed to the next one, Ankash.
Okay, the next one comes from OpenAI, and they talk about early methods for studying effective use and emotional well-being on ChatGPT.
Yeah, so let me introduce it and we can discuss it. So I was between optional and important. This is the study by OpenAI and Media Lab at MIT. So here, stop right here. So this is OpenAI did a study of how emotions are used in the conversations. So it's a massive study, 3 million participants or conversations studied, and quite the 36 million of classifications, so they would classify it and then assess it, right? And then if you go down, Ankash, to the next, and Media Lab did a focused control trial to see whether the voice changes how the people engage, the voice of the bot changes how the people engage with the conversation. So and if you scroll down, Ankash, what we found is quite interesting observations that emotional engagement is rare, that even with the heavy users, the effective use, so emotional use, is very limited to a small group. And the voice that we just talked about doesn't have much impact on the well-being of the person engaged. So and so on. So it's interesting. It's interesting findings, but they're not as. So they call it the beginnings. That's why I thought it's optional, but it's interesting foray in this space. So for that, it might be important. What do you think about this, John?
Yeah, I thought this was optional to important for me. I think this whole issue of what the psychology and emotional relationship is with these agents is going to be a very important field from a practical business standpoint. What does it mean in terms of engaging with customers, dealing with emotional situations, which is a big part of brand and loyalty and service and so forth. And then as a societal basis, we know we have a crisis in loneliness, especially for young males. And, what happens in the context of interacting with these robots, whether they're, as companion partners, like in the movie Her, or, more, amygdala-driven stuff, around pornography and things like that. It's going to get very weird, I think. And I think that the findings here from a societal basis are big. From a business basis, I think, are early. I was encouraged to see that small amounts of exposure don't seem to create problematic, and I don't know how they're defining problematic emotional relationships. And that people have a proper distance. A little bit more disturbing were some of the findings that in a small subset that they didn't explicate in this particular description, that a small subset did run into issues if they're highly involved. My assumption was to be tested was that what you have is a small number of people who are going deep and really trying to relate to the model for something that they probably should be talking to a therapist about but that's just a guess. Anyway, back to optional, hugely important area, early days. Glad to see.
Alden,
Glad
what
to
do
see
you?
that there's a rigorous look at it.
Yeah, Alden, do you want to move us to important? What's your thinking?
No, I agree. Somewhere between optional and important, and for the reasons mentioned, uh, yeah, there are the cases where the person killed himself using character AI. So this is clearly an area that is early days and needs improvement. So, sorry, there's some noise. Uh,
Yeah, let me make the case for important. I think this is interesting on the individual B2C level. I think from AI leader, they need to start thinking about their emotional tone for their business interactions, customer service, sales. I know, in real life, we, at least I do, end up having a preferred, teller at Bank of America or preferred human I interact with. So I think thinking through, just as we have what is our tone of our text and our website, we need to keep thinking through what's the emotional, particularly as we're moving towards everything being personalized on the website, on the customer interaction side. So I argue for support for this.
Okay. Yeah, and I think Lucinda and Kevin, our listeners, agree. So let's go important on this one. Okay. Alden, John, okay with important?
yeah.
Okay, sounds good. All right, let's go forward. Amkash, please.
Yes. So the next one comes from Anthropic, and this is about their Think tool.
Yes,
Yeah.
Alden.
Yeah,
This is
so this
for you.
is
It's
absolutely
important.
essential. And to describe what this Think tool is, till now AI has been like Q&A chatbots. Like you ask it a question and it would answer, right? But now AI is going towards this agentic system where you can give it complex tasks. Like y'all would have seen tasks like if anybody has used Manus, you can see how it goes around, browses the internet, takes decisions, right? So the simple Q&A has now evolved to these complex workflows and autonomous decision making. What this Think tool does is it allows people, or rather the workflow, to stop in the middle and say, hold on, let me think for a little while, right? Just like we humans do. Unlike before, where you would create a plan and then say, let's execute on it, what this does is it allows you to make your plan dynamic, right? You get some information, then you do something, then you think, then you do something more, then you think, then you do something more, right? And this gives the power to create like a lot more powerful agents as such. So I would say, like, for anybody in the enterprise, this would be an absolute, like, essential thing, and this is no doubt about it, this is going to take off and be huge.
Yeah. Okay, essential, John, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely essential. Reminds me of when my mother used to tell me, before I said something rude, why don't you just count to 10? I think that the idea of being able to put a pause, I think they do a good job of saying where it's not used. Simple queries. That doesn't seem to help there, but the notion of putting a pause in, to me, this is part of a bigger issue, which is how do we think about meaning in the context of a semantic operating system, right? And I think that that's where we're getting to, because we're just discovering the functions of how we relate to the models to get their best output, if you will. And this notion of a pause to do any number of semantic preparation steps, so that it then goes out, gets the proper tools, and assembles them, and so forth. I think this is a big deal.
There's a question from Vivek about what's the difference between the this tool and the deep thinking. Alden, do you want to take it?
Yeah. So deep research is basically you create a plan at the start and then you execute it, right? To use an analogy, it would be like saying, how do you go from Boston to New York, right? And you start your plan or you map yourself in Boston and then you follow it. That would be like deep research. Uh, Thinking is where you basically start driving from Boston, and when you like in 30 minutes you say, okay, where am I now? Let me think, right? And it allows you to create a dynamic plan and solve more complex problems than what you would with just basic deep research.
Right.
And
And
let me jump. Okay, sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
yeah, and I think the trade-off we're talking about here is time versus veracity or value of output. So,
Right.
and immediately we're like, oh my gosh, I want the answer. It's got to be really quick. Just what time is it in Bangalore? That's an immediate thing here. Deep research almost seems like they have a time box, and I think Alden, you're talking about how this is going. Use old school world batch thing here. I'm putting my request in. I'm willing to wait even 2 days because it's going to save me 3 weeks of work, or it's going to be so sophisticated. So I think we're going to, we're already seeing with deep research that the user is more than happy to give up time to save weeks and weeks or to have a much better answer. This is just a refinement of that.
Okay, let me jump in and say that technically, what Think is they are tracking the dependency parameters of the complex problem, and they're trying to actually make sure that those dependencies are successfully addressed before they respond. So essentially, it's this breaking the complex problem into pieces, but in addition, they are tracking the resolution of those parameters, the dependency parameters, successfully before they respond. So that's actually deeper thinking.
And the
Yeah.
next revolution. Sorry, go ahead, John.
No, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, Alden, I think the next revolution is from when the model feels stuck, is they pop out of band and go back to the human. So some of these models ask the humans up front for the refinement, and as they start driving to New York, and next thing you know, they're in Connecticut. Hey, let's pop back to the human and ask them if they actually want to go to Philly instead, or to get refinement, or show them as initial feedback.
It opens up a lot of options. You can go back to the human, you can go to a judge, you can go to somebody who is scoring, and then get more data. All of those options start opening up.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a dynamic data from the outside to validate what you're doing is essentially the differentiator here. It's a completely different mechanism than
Yeah, I really like the way you described it, Luda, which is a dependency. A tracing of the dependencies. There's a fantastic book from the 1960s called "Organizations in Action" by a guy named Thompson, and in it he says, "Why do people organize? They organize to reduce uncertainty." And he says, "Where does uncertainty come from?" He says, "Interdependence." To your point, Luda, and he says there are three fundamental forms of interdependence: sequential, A to B to C to D to E; reciprocal, A to B, B to A to C, C to A; and then pooled, like when you're making a movie or doing a heart operation, everybody has to come together at the same time. And I think what this does is it allows for better explication of either the sequential or the reciprocal, and maybe even the pooled. And then, to your point, I think when I say semantic operating system, Luda, I think some of those dependencies we understand and some of them we don't. As Alden was saying, you might be calling out to a judge or whatever. I think in the semantic operating system, we are actually defining those dependencies and also the nature of the problem. Is it sequential? Is it reciprocal or pooled? And sometimes, depending upon what you find, a sequential answer becomes reciprocal or pooled. And you need the ability to pop back up, as you say, Paul, reach out to humans and figure out, let's all work on this together. Then it goes back into reciprocal, goes back into pooled. And so I think this is a big deal in terms of semantic operating system development.
Yeah, and maybe since we are deeply going into this topic, Ankar, scroll to when to use the think tool, and that actually, to John, to your point about sequential decision making and the tool output analysis and policy heavy environments, because you can have detailed guidelines that you need to address. So it is a different type of a tool. Okay, sounds like a great discussion. Essential it is. Let's proceed, Ankash.
And for everybody, I'm just putting in the comments section, I'm putting in a free PDF of that book I talked about.
Thanks.
John, which comment section? LinkedIn or YouTube?
I'm sorry, on our StreamYard studio
on right here in the
comments.
Yeah, I don't think that goes to the viewers.
Um,
I think it does.
Okay.
Okay, but let's,
Very good.
yeah,
I'll figure that out later.
okay, we'll figure it out. Okay, sounds good. Essential. Thanks, Lucinda. Let's Essential Monday. Yes. Okay, let's proceed, Ankash.
Okay, the next one comes from the Wall Street Journal and talks about how Ford is looking to innovate faster with AI agents and NVIDIA's GPUs.
Yes, this was Adam's, but Adam had difficulties with the voice today. Not his voice, his computer's voice. So let me introduce this. This article is an interview with the AI chief of Ford Motors, and it talks about where Ford Motors is using AI with NVIDIA chips and the various design and R&D areas to create better cars. So I actually thought this was optional. Yeah, it's Ford. Maybe it is worth important, but I didn't get anything out of this article that we didn't know before. So I was in the optional camp. What did you think about this, Alden?
Yeah, just looks like a PR. So I would put it as optional.
Yeah. Alden, I went to business school with Joe Henricks, a real good buddy of mine who was President Ford for a while. And I asked him, I said, I can't believe all the coverage you guys get in Wall Street Journal. And he said, Paul, I don't know why. Wall Street Journal just loves Ford. And he said, anytime we call, they get an article put in. So I'm not surprised here at all. I think they've done a lot of testing on the reader, and it's a clickbait well for their older audiences.
Okay, so optional for you? Too?
Optional.
John, going optional. Anything to? Okay, optional, despite the Ford. All right, let's proceed, Ankash.
Okay, the next one comes from Qt AI's Moshi. So they have launched a new model called Moshi Viz, where they are teaching Moshi to converse about images.
Yep. Moshi was introduced just in February, a speech-to-speech with very low latency. John, what did you think about this virtual Moshi?
Yeah, I was on the fence. I was going to end up with optional. I was on the fence between important and optional, but I think it's optional. This is it's fun. I mean, you listen to it, describe what's going on, like that funky thing up at the top. Ankash, if we go back up, this, I think it's a plaything in a Paris, a Parisian, park, just as a beautiful kind of jungle gym, if you will. And figure out what the heck that is pretty amazing. And Moshi does a great job. Says, oh, looks like a plaything, looks like it's in a park, guesses that it's Paris, so it's impressive in terms of its thing. And then in terms of dialoguing about images, this is one of those things I just don't know if my intuition is right. Like, is this, I don't think this is going to be a big deal, but then I thought MTV would be a big deal until I saw it. You know what I mean? So I worry if dialoguing about images is a huge deal, this is essential. If it's not, which I don't think it is, I think this is optional.
Okay. Anybody wants to go between optional and essential? Alden?
No, this is optional for me. Just changing modalities. I'm not sure what the use case is for, that would make this a radically, important thing.
Well, I was thinking, Alden, the one way it could become radically important is if the American for Disabilities Act, were to extend and say, hey, look, if you have images for the sake of the blind, you have to be able to describe them, for example. But, so there's some regulatory thing this could become a big deal overnight. I think this current situation, it ain't going to happen.
John, but stay on that. I mean, accessibility is a big cost expense for companies. I know when I was first field, we spent over $1 million making sure our application was accessible. And what does accessibility look like in an AI generated world?
Yeah.
is a huge deal. And actually, I don't know how they solve that on the gaming industry here, but it is a non-trivial point for certain applications. And there's a whole, and the reason we had it was that we sold to utilities, and utilities had a whole bunch of law firms that were suing them, not having accessible websites. So this is
Yeah,
this is going
I
to be a
was
huge cost for companies going forward here after this gets defined, and it's going to
I
define in
was
the lawsuits. It's going to be lawsuits. It's going to be court cases, and then it's going to get.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was actually thinking, Alden, of beauty industry when they're recommending products because of based on selfies. So in order to get engagement, you might use this tool to go deeper into the picture and the like and discuss it. So that might be in industries like that may become quite huge. But it sounds like for now optional.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we already have fantastic, video to video, video to text, image to text, all of those are there.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to rack my brain as to why image to voice would be under what use case it would really be a factor. You can already go to image to text and then text to audio.
It's I think I think here they're focusing on recognition of what the image is about and what's the pieces are about. But nonetheless, it's optional for now.
Kevin
Okay.
says we have an ageist point of view here. Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's proceed, Ankash.
What did we rate this, Luda?
Optional.
Okay. Okay, the last one that we have for today is a research paper which talks about reinforcement learning for reasoning in small LLMs, what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Alden, what did you think? You got a heavy lift today.
Yeah. So on this, I would say optional until they prove themselves, right? So now what this is, they are just showing similar to how DeepSeek completely smashed the yield curve and was able to train models for really cheap. This is an example where for a couple of $100, they created a fantastically accurate model, right?
Actually, Alden, I think it was $42, but
Yeah,
yes.
42.
okay. Yeah, right. So, you know, good stuff, but I think the real proof will be like if they are able to now deliver a commercial application of this and move the Nvidia stock price or something like that, at which point this paper will then go from being optional to becoming like earth shattering. So they need to do a DeepSeek moment with whatever this paper does.
I actually was going to make a case for important. Look, this is available right now. It's out of Vietnam. It's using the Chinese models. I happen to think that the edge plus small models and reinforcement learning are to do radical things in terms of the cost base and capability here. And I think organizations need to start thinking about it. I agree with you all that I wouldn't make it essential, but this is it's an old. If you ever read Clay Christensen's work on disruptive technologies and how the mini mills in the steel business, this is before dumping and everything from the Chinese, but back when there was competition in the US, the mini mills started with rebar, and then they moved into cast steel, and then they moved into rolled stainless, which is a very expensive and difficult process. I think that this is the rebar of AI.
Yeah, I actually agree with John. I also rated it as important. We will get on the edge way more than now, and due to this type of techniques that are already available, give the budget and force it to get performance.
We got a perfect.
Paul, could you?
Paul, I think you got a lot of background noise.
No, yeah, I'm just excited about adding Dr. John's quote, "The rebar of AI," to the to the ever quote list here. Yeah,
Okay, so are you agreeing with important, Paul?
I'm not, but I'll support it. Yeah.
Ha. Alden agreeing with important?
Yeah, it's $42 is good, and
Okay.
if
Cool. All right,
yeah, it's
important
tech
it is.
innovation.
Important it is. Ankash, please get us the rating sheet. And while we're waiting, Paul, what's happening with the Learning Lab tonight?
That is a good question. We have an open slot in Learning Lab here. So I've got 2 options, but people are in line, have an option, let me know. We can get it slotted in.
Okay.
But we are confirmed for tonight for 7 o'clock for our Learning Lab.
And there will be a 5 minutes on how do you create an AI cluster.
Great, John. Great. Actually, John, that might be a bigger topic overall because I think a lot of people are interested in that. Actually, let's make that the showcase because that fits in right into the AI blueprint.
So,
So anyway, to answer it, so tonight's showcase, we'll be discussing
7 o'clock Eastern time. Please join, and you will have a mystery speaker. So it's maybe more interesting. Okay. So today we have 2 essentials, 2 importance, and 2 optionals. So essentials is working with LLMs as a team or using LLMs as teammates. And another essential is the Think tool, the new technique from Anthropic. Thank you all for listening. We really appreciate our participants who give us comments. Thank you very much. Alden, thanks for joining. Like always, tremendous comments. Very much appreciated. Thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Great. Thanks for having me.